All right, so March 23, variant 22, question 3B. Part A deals with inequality of income and how can inequality of income can actually benefit the economy. We need to talk on both sides. We have to talk about the reasons for inequality and its benefit to the economy and not so benefit of the economy also. So sort of like that. But this one is slightly different. This one is about how minimum price in a market can be justified. You need to make a diagram. Please make sure that your diagram is not too far away. Maximum जो होना चाहिए वो after defining what minimum price is. So you can define what is P minimum. It's a government price legislation which does not allow the prices to fall below a certain level. That's your definition. फिर अब वो effective है कि नहीं, that's another thing. Okay. So what we know is either can it ever be justified के अंदर हमने केस बनाना है that yes, P minimum is justifiable, so let's impose it, so another thing which must be talked about is कि P minimum आप लगा क्यों रहे हैं? Because अगर आपको justify करना है तो justify मतलब है that it should actually, it should benefit the system in some way or the other. This is how you impose P minimum. Prices cannot fall below this level. The prices can rise. We know what it does. Quantity demanded sort of falls down. Let's mark it QD. On the other hand, quantity supplied increases. Over here, we end up with a surplus in our hand. Okay, with a surplus in our hands. Price wants to fall down, but we cannot allow the prices to fall down. That's the whole thing, right? तो अब इस situation के अंदर what can we do? Firstly, you must explain your diagram because अगर उन्होंने दिया है, they've asked for the diagram, there needs to be a slight explanation of what you just created over here. Once we have this, उसके बाद potential advantages की बात कर लेते हैं. Under what circumstances this would be explain the diagram. So one of the advantage I can clearly see is that somehow P minimum की वजह से we're able to discourage the consumption. So mera one of the potential advantage could be that it can discourage by raising the price, by being imposed above the equilibrium, by raising the price, it can discourage consumption of
You only
the
show
merit.
effective.
Huh? Yeah,
You only
yeah, you
show effective.
always show effective. There's no point of talking about ineffective. The only thing about ineffective part that can be worth mentioning is from the limitations point of view that, if it's not properly imposed at the correct level, then it's not going to have the desired impact. तो उस पॉइंट के अंदर आप बोल सकते हैं कि अगर बिलो इक्विलिब्रियम लगा दिया तो then it's ineffective because it's not creating the desired result. ठीक है? So one of this, and then you can please, through explanation, you can explain that how price goes up, quantity demanded falls from Q0 to QD or whatever. Another thing that we can also talk about, another case, we've done that, But the other case is that it can also be used to protect um, incomes of producers by guaranteeing a price that it cannot fall below this, and they can increase the supply and sort of like in terms of security that they've produced extra quantities and they can sell it in the market and they can generate more incomes. तो ये दो aspects हैं जिसके अंदर you can talk in terms of the advantage and you need to explain, right? Explanation क्या होगा? So if the price is above equilibrium and it cannot fall down, then quantity demanded falls. So उधर pass हो गया. Second case के अंदर to protect farmers' income, the prices cannot fall below. So there is like a guarantee price that the farmers will get. So definitely their incomes are protected. And
Even
secondly,
incomes fall if demand falls.
yeah, revenue will definitely fall. Yeah, definitely revenue will fall. That is my counter argument then, that because of this, the quantity demanded will fall and the revenues will fall, and that can cause um, the unsold stock to reduce their incomes. But here, we're just saying that, if prices cannot fall below this certain level, so there is sort of like farmers' income is getting protected that, they can't sell it below this level. But I understand the whole demand wala aspect. That makes perfect sense. पर इस केस के अंदर असल में इस केस के अंदर the problem is what is happening to that surplus. असल issue is that. Is the government buying? Are you selling it abroad? Are you stocking it and using it later on, maybe in the future? There's a lot of uncertainty because of this surplus which is in your hand now. So they ignore all of that and they just simply say that if it's above equilibrium and it's a guarantee price cannot fall below this, they won't be exploited. So their incomes will rise as a result of that. So they're sort of like taking it in that. Although you have to do the counter argument and you can do that um, against it. Uh, so ये दो आपके पास अच्छे reasons हैं with diagram. I think you can easily get up to level 2, 4 to 5 marks. But that will only be one-sided. You have to do a counter argument about the disadvantages. You don't have to do a counter argument of another alternative policy, at least over here. Uh, the only time they would accept, uh, not in the analysis. I'm sure कि analysis के अंदर तो they will not accept it because they haven't used the word best or anything. Evaluation में हो जाए तो हो जाए, but again that can vary. Evaluation में अगर आपने alternative, अच्छा alternative policy को भी अगर आप कर रहे हो ना, that alternative policy has to be a counter argument uh, of the minimum price के against minimum price how that policy might be effective. Like at least for this one, for analysis part, I don't think so. Then you're going to talk about the disadvantage of it. Okay? अब disadvantage की जब हम बात करते हैं तो disadvantage के अंदर there's all sorts. एक तो नंबर वन, जब हम demerit की बात कर रहे थे तो उसके अंदर we can talk about that how demerits are inelastic. So not much reduction. थोड़ा सा इसको और you should elaborate in terms of its habitual and price rise will not lead to a much uh, lower quantity demanded and stuff like that. So it's going to potentially
What
fail
about
in that.
increase in government revenue
What? Increase in revenue.
in government revenue?
Inelastic hoga to yeah, government revenue. Government is not getting anything in minimum maximum price legislation. How are they
So it's
getting revenue?
inelastic and It's a
You
minimum price.
mean, okay, so if it's inelastic, it's minimum price goes up, quantity demand falls, they make higher revenues, and so the government can actually get some. ये तो मुझे ज़्यादा as an advantage लग रहा है than a disadvantage. If you want to sort of like fit it in, you can fit it in over here. पहले part में advantage में government getting more money. Again, in that उसके अंदर भी it's such a vague, far fetch. थोड़ा लंबा हो जाएगा. If the government had to make money, then directly much more better would have been taxes लगा दो and just collect the revenue up front. Why go through the whole channel? Can maybe they'll sell, maybe they'll not sell enough, and their revenue might go up, not go up. थोड़ा सा दूर का point है. It's not wrong. It applies in this whole thing. लेकिन that's acting as an advantage actually. Hey, because
As a
remember
minimum
you
price, and the tax percentage would increase.
uh in the minimum tax percentage, so if it is above equilibrium, per unit they're going to get a higher tax. Tax rate तो वही रहेगा ना जो tax rate है. If it's an ad valorem tax, maybe specific में तो it won't work as such, but yeah, ad valorem के अंदर हो सकता है. Again, don't make it too complex, yaar. It's an easy examination. Although you're right about that, कि ठीक है government feels कि उसके अंदर ज्यादा होगा. Again, my counter argument to that is cigarettes के ऊपर directly ज्यादा percentage लगा दो and get that money. Why even give them a chance to even like try and steal the tax or create a whole black market ka situation and all of that? Because there's a lot of question marks that comes with P minimum and the whole surplus. Because one of the disadvantage we want to talk about is all that excess surplus which has been created, because that surplus is not a small problem. This surplus which has created, there are two aspects to it. One is there is clearly misallocation of country's scarce resources, which is going on over here. Misallocation of scarce resources, which government is sort of like creating. And secondly, there's a risk of this whole black market uh, coming up, and all of this getting sold out at lower prices, and the government might not be able to manage this whole aspect. So, from the disadvantage point of view, again, I'm not saying that you're wrong in what you're saying. Those are perfectly valid statements. Please, if you're doing that, then be very clear in your wordings. Don't assume any knowledge. एक एक बात को elaborate करो अच्छी writing के अंदर, so that the examiner, when they read, they feel okay, it flows. It sounds like an advantage. It sounds like a proper judgment from the government. But again, everyone or all examiners don't have that capacity to understand what you're writing and be able to apply the knowledge, because economics है, बहुत तरीकों से तुम एक ही बात को समझा सकते हो, but whoever is checking on the other side, they want to stick to the basic marking scheme. When you go off the marking scheme, when you go off the basic ideas and you delve into these complex ideas, then everyone does not have the capacity to understand what you're trying to say. तो वो ऐसा ना हो कि backfire हो जाए. Once you've done your simple ideas, then do जितना complex करना है तुम करो, but don't start with complex. Bad impression के साथ साथ जो है ना बड़े technical issues आ जाएंगे, right? Although you're not wrong, like I mentioned. So I'm just giving you the simple, basic, which everybody is going to probably think and write. So ये हमारे दो मुझे एक disadvantages नजर आ रहे हैं. एक, how it might not be so much effective in causing what we're trying to do. दूसरे केस के अंदर द होल आइडिया ऑफ एक्सेस, जिसमें मिस एलोकेशन भी हो रही है, ब्लैक मार्केट्स भी क्रिएट हो रही हैं, और फार्मर्स की इनकम जो है वो हो सकता है प्रोटेक्टेड भी नहीं हो रही हो. अच्छा, इन अनदर केस, even from the producer's point of view, this is just a point that I'm adding, it makes sense that if the good is exported, then it will reduce competitiveness and reduce export revenue. All right. Whenever you use the word export or import, remember, there is no such thing as export and import when you're writing. There is export price, there is export quantity, there is export volume, there is export revenue, there is import price, there's import expenditure, there's import volume, but there is no such thing as import and export. Whenever you say export will rise, export will fall, that doesn't mean anything. We specifically, we're not going to give you the mark. If you just write export and import, you need to make clarity on whether you're talking in terms of volume, price, or revenue. Yani quantity, price, or revenue. Okay? इसको independently ऐसे मत लिखना. Now, now that we've done counter arguments, we can go for evaluation. Evaluation के अंदर आपने किस चीज की बात करनी है कि whether, let me go back to the question and read the question. Um, with the help of the diagram, assess whether the introduction of a minimum price in a market can be justified. So इसके अंदर evaluation के अंदर I would talk about minimum price can ever be justified. What can I say in this one? Can it ever be justified? Can it be ever justified over another policy? Or can it be just justified in general? So in the case of demerit good, I would say it can be justified because in terms of, again मैं taxation के साथ इसको compare करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ बार बार. I'm making a counter. So एक चीज, the one thing that I think we can do in this one is we should be able to talk about an alternative policy. So alternative policy के अंदर you can suggest minimum की जगह, if we impose indirect taxes जो कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन बढ़ाएगी और सप्लाई रिड्यूस करेगी, जिससे प्राइस ऊपर जाएगी और डीमेरिट गुड्स कैन बी रिड्यूस्ड इन कंजम्पशन. So it works in that way also while maintaining the equilibrium also. So no misallocation of resources. तो उस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से तो मुझे अनजस्टिफाइबल लग रही है. टैक्सेस ज्यादा जस्टिफाइबल है बिकॉज टैक्सेस एटलीस्ट इक्विलिब्रियम तो फॉलो करेगा. यहाँ तो सरप्लस भी हो रहा है, मिस एलोकेशन भी हो रही है, और इन्फोर्समेंट सही से नहीं है, तो वो भी एक प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट हो रहा है. तो उस एस्पेक्ट से तो आई फील दैट इट इज फेलिंग. मिनिमम प्राइस लेजिस्लेशन के अंदर अगर हम करते हैं दैट इफ यू वांट टू प्रोटेक्ट द फार्मर्स इनकम, अगेन ट्रांसफर पेमेंट्स इज मच मोर डायरेक्ट, subsidies is much more direct than creating the whole minimum prices. But उसके अंदर मुझे ये पता है minimum prices के अंदर, sorry, the other subsidies or transfer payments में, that the government needs to spend money. If the government does not have money available, funds are not there, then minimum pricing policy is better um, to effectively try to protect farmers' income through higher prices. Um, तो उस केस के अंदर आई फील कि इट माइट बी एक्चुअली मोर इफेक्टिव, protect farmers' income in a economy where government does not have much funds available. तो वहाँ it makes more of a sense. So इस तरह का कोई justified,
Justified is overall or for consumers, producers, producing a law.
I think it's just justified on the basis of what you're trying to demerit के अंदर you're trying to protect the consumers, so it's justifiable. Um, uh, when you're trying to protect the incomes of, तो फिर उसके point of view से है. लेकिन if you want to talk in terms of, I think that's a good one that you just mentioned, because इसके अंदर अगर आप producers को भी तो argue कर सकते हो कि minimum के अंदर producers को अगर आप किसी तरीके से ले आते हैं ना, argue in terms of their scenario that how their incomes are going to fall as a result of this and discourage them. So I think that would be fine also. That's not wrong. You can talk about that also. We just want something fresh and new, which you haven't talked about Upper as such. Lekin it should be connecting to what you've written Upper also. Not come up with the whole, जैसे हमने दो चीजों की बात की है, demerit and farmers' income. We don't want evaluation where you come up with some third aspect, which you haven't talked in the analysis about. It needs to be a continuation of the analysis, not repetition of the analysis also. बस फिर तो वो सीन हो जाएगा कि you've already written this.